You know that feeling when everything in your life seems perfectly normal, and then suddenly, it's not. That's exactly where I was last week. Daniel, my husband, walked into the living room with this ridiculous grin, carrying a designer duffel bag like he'd just won some secret lottery. I blinked at him, coffee in hand, trying to figure out if I was dreaming or if he was actually serious. "Thanks for the upgrade," he said, tossing his sunglasses onto the table. Oh, you can imagine the look on my face. Half confusion, half disbelief. And the worst part? He had no idea that the little secret I'd been keeping would turn his whole world upside down. Honestly, my stomach twisted in a way I hadn't felt in years. Part of me wanted to scream, part of me just wanted to laugh, because the truth, everything he thought he was getting away with, he wasn't even close. For years, I thought I had it all figured out. My life with Daniel seemed stable on the surface. Our little routines, weekend brunches, the occasional movie night at home. But of course, like any marriage, we had our moments. Nothing major, just the usual small arguments about chores, finances, or where to go for vacation. I'd always brush them off with a smile, telling myself every couple has disagreements. Deep down, I believed we were a team. I was 34, working in cybersecurity, a field that demanded sharp instincts and constant vigilance. Daniel, on the other hand, had a way of making life feel like a continuous adventure, sometimes charming, sometimes reckless. He could spin a story out of thin air, make even the most questionable idea sound brilliant. I admired that about him in the beginning, but over the years, those adventures started piling up into a quiet worry in the back of my mind. The unexplained trips, the sudden late-night calls he'd take in another room, the little financial secrets he kept tucked away. I'd tell myself I was overthinking, that love sometimes required trust, even when the signs weren't perfect. My family was simple but supportive. My parents had taught me to value honesty and independence, lessons I carried every day. My younger brother, Theo, often joked that I was too cautious with Daniel, that I needed to loosen up. And my closest friend, Olivia, had been my sounding board through every minor crisis and heartbreak, someone I knew I could call at any hour. One quiet Tuesday, I was sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, reviewing a routine cybersecurity report, when I noticed something odd. A string of alerts on my banking app. My stomach tightened. At first, I convinced myself it was a glitch, maybe a bank error or some scam targeting my accounts at work. But as I dug deeper, cross-referencing charges and locations, the pieces started to click in a way that made my heart sink. Daniel. It had to be him. The expensive dinners, hotel bookings, designer stores, places he had no legitimate reason to visit. My mind raced. Could he really be that careless? Or was this deliberate? I felt a mix of disbelief, anger, and a strange, grim fascination. How could the man I'd built my life with, the one I trusted implicitly, turn out to be so reckless, so audacious? And the twist that made my chest tighten even more. The card he was using wasn't a regular one. It was part of a dummy account ID set up at work to track fraud. Every purchase triggered alerts. Every move he made was now visible, and I realized with a chill that Daniel had just walked himself straight into a trap he didn't even know existed. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a slow breath. Oh, Daniel, you really had no idea what was coming next. I had trusted Daniel completely. Not just in the little things, like remembering to pick up groceries or texting me when he was running late, but in the big things, our plans, our future, the quiet understanding that we were supposed to be a team. Betrayal was something I had read about in books or seen in movies, not something I thought would happen in my own living room. And yet, here I was, scrolling through alerts and transaction histories that made my hands shake. Every extravagant charge, every hotel booking, every late-night purchase screamed his name. It wasn't just money. It was the audacity, the sheer disregard for the life we'd built together. I felt a knot tighten in my chest, a mix of disbelief and burning anger. How could the man I loved, the man I thought I knew, think he could get away with this? And the cruel twist. He didn't even realize he'd trapped himself. The card he'd stolen from me wasn't a normal account. It was part of a dummy program at work, set up to catch fraudsters in the act. Every swipe, every purchase was logged and watched. My betrayal wasn't just discovered. It was being documented in real time, and he had no clue he'd just signed his own confession. It started slowly, almost innocently at first. A notification here, a small charge there. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe it was a mistake, a glitch in the system. But then the alerts kept coming. Expensive dinners at restaurants I had never been to, online purchases I didn't recognize, hotel bookings in cities I hadn't even mentioned. My stomach sank each time my phone buzzed. I felt this sick twist of panic mixed with disbelief. How could this be happening? At first, I told myself I was imagining things, that maybe Daniel had a surprise planned, something extravagant I wasn't supposed to know about. But as the list of charges grew, that idea crumbled. It wasn't a surprise. It was deliberate. Every charge made my heart pound faster. I could feel a storm of emotions swirling inside me. Betrayal, anger, and the kind of fear that makes your hands tremble. And then the worst realization hit me. The way the transactions lined up, the timing, the locations. It was no accident. Someone close to me knew my passwords, knew my financial habits. My mind raced through every late-night call, every excuse Daniel had given me, every story that hadn't added up. Oh no, it was him. Daniel. And I knew, with a sinking certainty, that this was just the beginning of a nightmare I hadn't expected. At first I told myself it had to be a simple mistake. Banks make errors all the time, right? Or maybe someone had tried to commit fraud, and my card had been compromised. I calmed myself, thinking it was temporary, hoping the alerts would stop. But they didn't. The charges kept coming, one after another, each one more lavish than the last. Luxury hotels, first-class flights, designer stores. My pulse raced every time my phone buzzed. I started combing through every detail, checking dates, amounts, locations. That's when the panic began to settle into a cold, heavy dread. This wasn't random. The purchases were deliberate, calculated, and they followed a pattern only someone familiar with my routines could know. My mind went back to the little things I had brushed off before. The secretive glances at my laptop, the late-night excuses, the small inconsistencies in Daniel's stories. And then the truth hit me like a punch to the stomach. It couldn't be anyone else. The way the transactions lined up with his usual movements, the audacity, the familiarity with my financial accounts, it was him. Daniel. My husband. My stomach turned. The man I trusted completely had crossed a line I never imagined. And somehow, in all his confidence, he didn't even realize how badly he had underestimated me. The next morning, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I confronted Daniel while he sipped his coffee, trying to keep my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. I laid out the transactions, scrolling through my phone so he could see every extravagant charge, every hotel booking, every luxury purchase. My hands shook as I handed him the device, a mix of fear and frustration boiling up inside me. Daniel barely looked at the screen. He waved a hand dismissively, his usual charm trying to smooth over the tension. "It's probably a bank mistake," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. "They'll sort it out." I stared at him, my mind reeling. A bank mistake? Really? Every single charge, spread across multiple cities, at the exact places he had been visiting? The thought made my stomach churn. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but another part of me froze in disbelief. Could he really be that careless? That audacious? The more he downplayed it, the more certain I became that this wasn't some innocent error. There was a deeper betrayal here, one I wasn't ready to face. And the twist, the thing that made my blood run cold. was realizing that every move he thought he was getting away with was completely visible to me. Oh no. Daniel had no idea just how trapped he already was. Daniel's reaction didn't sit right with me. The way he shrugged off the charges, the calmness that seemed almost rehearsed, it set off alarms in my head. My stomach twisted as I realized this wasn't just a bank error. His defensiveness was a shield, a carefully constructed story to hide something. That's when the small, nagging voice I'd been ignoring for weeks suddenly became impossible to silence. I decided to take matters into my own hands, quietly. I started digging into the details, cross-referencing dates, amounts, and locations, paying close attention to patterns I knew only someone familiar with my life could exploit. My heart pounded as I pieced things together, connecting the dots between his late nights, sudden excuses, and the lavish charges I couldn't explain. Every new discovery made my pulse quicken, a mix of fear, anger, and this strange thrill of finally seeing the truth take shape. The twist. Every detail pointed back to him. Daniel. The very man I trusted above all else was weaving his own web of deception right under my nose, and he had no idea I was onto him. Oh, wow. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. But I also knew I had an advantage he would never anticipate. Finally, the balance of power had shifted, and I was ready to see it through. I spent hours going through the bank records, my eyes scanning line after line of transactions, every notification sending a jolt through my chest. Then it hit me. The pattern was unmistakable. Every extravagant purchase, every booking, every lavish dinner coincided with places Daniel frequently visited with his coworker, Marcus. My hands shook as I realized what this meant. It wasn't random spending. It was deliberate, calculated, and it all revolved around him and his little circle. The thought made my stomach churn. All those times he claimed late work meetings or team dinners, all those sudden business trips, they weren't innocent. They were cover for a secret I had never imagined, and the audacity of it left me reeling. I felt a mix of shock, anger, and this sharp, twisting sense of betrayal that made it hard to breathe. How could he use our life, our trust, as a playground for his schemes without a second thought? And then the cruel twist landed. Marcus, the coworker I had occasionally met and thought of as harmless, had unwittingly become part of the evidence trail. Every location Daniel visited, every expense he made, was now a thread linking him to the truth. My heart pounded. Oh no. Daniel had underestimated me completely. I was seeing the full picture, and the reality was far worse than I had ever feared. By the time I reached out to Olivia, I was a whirlwind of emotions. Angry, confused, and more than a little afraid of what I might discover. I laid out everything I had found, the bank alerts, the hotel bookings, the extravagant charges, and the suspicious timing of Daniel's outings with Marcus. Olivia, ever level-headed, immediately started helping me piece together a timeline, lining up each of Daniel's excuses against the transactions. Seeing it all mapped out made my stomach drop. Every late-night work call, every sudden trip, every unexplained expense now fit perfectly into a pattern I could no longer ignore. The man I trusted, the one I thought I knew better than anyone, had been lying to me repeatedly, and with a precision that made my head spin. It was almost surreal, watching the truth take shape like a puzzle I'd been given pieces to without realizing it. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and a strange, cold clarity. Oh wow. All this time, I had brushed off the little inconsistencies, the nagging doubts, thinking I was being paranoid. And yet, here it was, undeniable and terrifyingly real. With Olivia's help, the story I had feared was finally taking form, and I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. It didn't take long before the pieces fell into place, and the full, ugly truth hit me like a tidal wave. As I combed through the records and receipts, cross-referencing dates, locations, and Daniel's own calendar, I realized he had been secretly using my credit card for months. Months. Every luxurious dinner, every hotel stay, Every online splurge wasn't just reckless spending. It was a calculated effort to fund his lifestyle and quietly cover debts I had no idea existed. My heart pounded as I scrolled through each transaction, the weight of betrayal sinking in deeper with every line. How could he do this? How could the man I had trusted implicitly, the one I had built a life around, take so much without a second thought? A mix of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak swirled inside me, making it hard to breathe. And the cruel twist? He thought he was invisible, untouchable, clever enough to get away with it. But in reality, every swipe, every charge, every secret transaction was a glaring confession waiting to be uncovered. Oh, wow. The audacity, the recklessness. It was staggering. I felt a bitter clarity wash over me. Daniel had underestimated me completely, and now, finally, I had the evidence I needed to face him with the truth. The financial betrayal was one thing, but what cut the deepest was the collapse of trust. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. Every shared plan, every moment of intimacy, every promise Daniel had ever made now seemed tainted, like a carefully constructed illusion that had crumbled without warning. I kept replaying the months in my head. How I had unknowingly funded his reckless indulgences. How he had hidden debts behind a smile and excuses. How every seemingly small lie had built into this enormous deception. My emotions were a storm. Anger, disbelief, heartbreak, and an aching sense of loss all tangled together. I caught myself staring at the credit card statements, shaking my head in disbelief, whispering, "How could he do this?" It wasn't just money. It was the life we had built together, the stability I thought I could rely on, slipping through my fingers. And then came the harsh, bitter clarity. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted above all else, had not only broken the rules, but shattered the foundation of everything we shared. Oh, wow. The sting of betrayal was sharper than I had ever imagined. And yet, beneath the devastation, a flicker of determination began to spark. I knew I couldn't let this go unanswered. Just when I thought the storm had settled enough for me to breathe, Helena, Daniel's sister, called. I hadn't expected her to get involved, and frankly, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. She tried to explain, her voice trembling slightly, saying Daniel was under pressure at work, that he had made bad choices out of desperation. I listened, part of me wanting to understand, another part bristling with disbelief. Pressure? Desperation? Really? I thought of the months of lies, the calculated purchases, the pattern that had become impossible to ignore. Every time I had trusted him, every time I had let my guard down, he had taken advantage, and now someone was trying to soften the blow for him. Oh, wow. It made my blood boil. It wasn't just about being under stress. It was the sheer audacity, the lack of accountability, the complete disregard for the life we shared. I felt a mix of anger, sorrow, and a bitter clarity. I wanted to shout, to make Helena see what I saw, but instead, I just sat there, shaking my head. This wasn't about sympathy. This was about truth, about facing the consequences of choices that weren't just mistakes. They were betrayals. And I knew, with every fiber of my being, that Daniel would have to answer for them. No matter what Helena said, I couldn't accept excuses for deceit and theft within my marriage. I had built my life on trust, on the belief that honesty was non-negotiable, and Daniel had shattered that foundation. Desperation or pressure didn't justify the months of secret charges, the deliberate betrayal, or the erosion of everything we had shared. My heart ached, not just for the money, but for the trust that could never be restored. Anger bubbled under the surface, hot and relentless. I thought of every late-night meeting, every fabricated excuse, every lavish purchase he had convinced himself I wouldn't notice. How could someone I had loved so deeply, someone I had believed in, betray me so completely? The audacity left me dizzy, and yet, a strange clarity emerged amid the chaos. Oh, wow. This wasn't just a financial issue. It was the ultimate test of who I was willing to be in a life where deceit had no place. I felt a flicker of empowerment amid the heartbreak. I realized I couldn't let comfort, familiarity, or love blind me to the truth. This wasn't about revenge. It was about integrity, about reclaiming my life from the shadows of someone else's lies. And for the first time, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I couldn't hold it in any longer. That night, I gathered every piece of evidence, the bank statements, the hotel receipts, the timeline Olivia and I had painstakingly mapped out, and laid them all on the kitchen table. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the mix of anger and resolve that had been building inside me for weeks. I looked Daniel in the eye, and for the first time, I didn't feel the warmth or trust I once had. "Daniel," I said, my voice steady but sharp, "I need you to be completely honest with me. I have proof of every charge, every trip, every lie. I know what's been happening." His face fell. The casual confidence he always carried vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. I could see him struggling to form words, to explain, to excuse himself. But the evidence didn't lie. It was clear, undeniable, and crushing in its clarity. Oh, wow. The realization hit both of us. I felt a strange, almost surreal mix of sorrow and power. Sorrow for what we had lost, power in knowing that the truth was finally laid bare. I wasn't asking for explanations anymore. I was demanding accountability, and for the first time, Daniel couldn't charm or hide his way out of it. This confrontation was mine to own, and I was ready. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of silence, Daniel's defenses crumbled. His shoulders slumped, his eyes avoiding mine, and he admitted everything. The months of secret spending, the lies, the trips, the way he had used my trust to fund his reckless lifestyle. The words hit me like ice, cold and undeniable. My chest tightened, my stomach knotted, and I could barely breathe as the truth spilled from his lips. I'm so sorry," he stammered, his voice trembling. "I never meant for it to go this far. I'll pay you back, I promise. Please forgive me." Oh, wow. The audacity. The apology felt almost surreal, like watching someone else's life unravel in slow motion. Part of me wanted to scream, to cry, to shake him until he understood the gravity of what he had done. Another part, the logical part I clung to, recognized that words alone couldn't erase the months of deception, the erosion of trust, or the betrayal that cut far deeper than money ever could. I felt a swirl of conflicting emotions, pain, disbelief, anger, and a tiny flicker of something like relief that the truth was finally out. But forgiveness? That wasn't mine to give so easily. Not yet. This was his reckoning, and I was determined to face it fully, clear-eyed and unflinching. After Daniel's confession, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and determination. My trust had been shattered, and the life I thought we shared had been compromised. I realized I couldn't rely on him to make things right, or even to stop himself from further harm. I needed to take control, and fast. The first step was securing my finances. I froze the accounts he had accessed, changed passwords, and blocked his cards. Each click of confirmation felt like reclaiming a piece of my life, a small victory amid the chaos. My heart pounded as I imagined the look on his face when he realized he no longer had access to what he had taken for granted. Oh, wow. The power shift was palpable, and it felt surprisingly liberating. Next, I consulted a lawyer, laying out every detail, every transaction, every manipulation. The legal advice was clear. I needed to protect myself fully, ensure accountability, and prepare for the financial and emotional fallout. Part of me wanted to run from the mess, but another part, stronger and sharper than I had realized, surged forward. I was done being a bystander in my own life. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of control, a sense of clarity. I was no longer a victim. I was taking charge. As I navigated the aftermath, I realized something profound. Financial betrayal cuts just as deeply as emotional infidelity. The shock of discovering Daniel's deception wasn't just about the money. It was about trust, security, and the foundation of a life I thought we shared. Each unauthorized charge felt like a punch, a reminder that the person I loved and relied on had violated the most intimate boundaries of our relationship. I thought about the late nights I spent worrying, the little sacrifices I had made, the plans we had discussed as partners, and how he had used them against me. Oh, wow. It wasn't just numbers in a ledger. It was my sense of safety, my confidence in our partnership, my belief that we were equals in life and in love. That realization hit harder than I ever expected. The emotional weight of betrayal compounded the financial loss. I felt anger, sorrow, and an almost physical ache in my chest every time I thought about the months he had lied and manipulated me. But alongside the hurt, I also discovered resilience. I understood that protecting myself, reclaiming my independence, and setting clear boundaries wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming my sense of self, my dignity, and the life I deserved. Living through Daniel's betrayal taught me lessons I never wanted to learn the hard way, but now can't ignore. Above all, I understood the critical importance of transparency, communication, and boundaries in any relationship. Trust isn't just about feelings, it's about actions, honesty, and mutual respect. Without these, even love that once felt unshakable can crumble under the weight of secrecy. I thought back to all the small signs I had overlooked. The unexplained expenses, the evasive answers, the late nights he called work emergencies. Each one was a warning I had ignored because I wanted to believe in the person I loved. Oh, wow. Hindsight hit me like a lightning bolt. If there had been open communication, if boundaries had been clearly established and respected, none of this would have escalated into months of financial deception. Now, as I rebuild my life and take control of my finances and my choices, I carry this lesson with me. Setting boundaries isn't a sign of mistrust, it's a form of self-respect. Being transparent and honest isn't always easy, but it's essential. And I know that moving forward, these principles will guide me to healthier relationships, ones built on mutual trust, respect, and clarity, never on secrecy or manipulation. Discovering Daniel E.'s deception wasn't just shocking. It left a lasting psychological impact that I hadn't anticipated. For days, I felt like I was living in a fog, questioning not only him, but also my own judgment. How had I missed the signs? How could someone I trusted so deeply manipulate and lie without me realizing it? Oh, wow. The sense of betrayal cut deeper than I ever imagined. There were moments of disbelief, when I caught myself replaying conversations, searching for hints, wondering if I had been blind or naive. Anxiety crept in during ordinary routines, and I noticed how I second-guessed small decisions, questioning whether I could trust even the simplest facts or promises. The emotional weight was exhausting. Sleep felt heavy, my thoughts relentless, and even the act of making daily choices carried a shadow of doubt. Yet, amid the chaos, there was clarity forming. I realized that this psychological turbulence wasn't weakness. It was a reaction to the violation of trust, a natural response to deception from someone I had relied on. It forced me to reflect, to reassess, and ultimately to strengthen my boundaries. Oh, wow. The pain was intense, but it also became a turning point. I knew I had to rebuild not just my life, but my sense of security and confidence in myself. Months have passed since I confronted Daniel and began reclaiming my life. The apartment feels lighter, my finances secure, and my trust in myself slowly rebuilding. Yet even now, there are moments when a memory surfaces, a glance, a laugh, a small gesture, that tugs at the edges of what I felt before. It's strange how the heart holds on to echoes, even when you know the person no longer belongs in your life. I've learned so much about resilience, boundaries, and the importance of trusting my instincts. But part of me still wonders how people we love can betray us so completely. How do you heal when the wounds aren't just emotional, but entwined with every day you thought was secure? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to face a betrayal that shook your trust to the core? And how did you navigate it? Thank you for listening to my story and sharing this space with me. If it resonated with you, consider giving it a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more honest stories about life, love, and lessons learned.